chemicals. And to lead us in this discussion, I want to invite one of the NBA board members and the representative from the PS Ministry of Health at the NBA board, Dr. Isabella. Karibu sana.
Okay, distinguished guests, participants, good afternoon. Good afternoon again. Yes, that sounds like people who had a good lunch. So we are now starting our technical session for this conference. Now that we finished up with the formalities in the early morning, we are going to be having 4 panelists covering various topics around regulation of this biotechnology. And I'd like us to begin with one of our experts, Dr. John Komen, who is a distinguished expert in agricultural biotechnology and biosafety, currently serving with the program of biosafety systems. Dr. John Komen has extensive experience in biosafety regulations, research and policy development, and has contributed significantly to advancing safe and sustainable use of biotechnology in agriculture across Africa. His work focuses on strengthening biosafety frameworks, facilitating capacity building, and promoting science-based decision-making to enhance biosecurity and environment protection. So, karibu sana, Dr. John Komen, who's going to be walking us through our first session in our program, titled International Treaties and Laws Governing GMOs. Asanteni.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for this generous introduction. I hope you can hear me clearly in the room. Hearing none, I think what I'm saying. The only small technical problem I have is that my webcam is not working, so you have to believe that I am the guy on the black and white picture. My name is John Komen, and indeed I've been involved in implementing the program for biosafety systems for the past 20 years. From day one onwards, Kenya has been a leading partner country for the PBS work. And of course, once the NBA was launched by the adoption of the National Biosafety Act in 2010, we have been partnering closely with the NBA. So we're approaching 15 years of productive collaboration between PBS and NBA. So having said that, I would like to first of all appreciate the guests of honor who we heard speaking this morning, setting the overall context. I would like to express my sincere thanks to NBA and the NBA teams and friends in the agency. Dr. Engetic, as the CEO of A, thank you so much for your excellent support to our program and for inviting me to this meeting. Also present in the room, so you can interact with them face to face, are my colleagues from the ISA EFRI Center and the Program for Biosafety Systems in Kenya. Our local coordinator is Dr. who's with you today and tomorrow. The program is supported by Dr. Margaret Karembu and Mrs. Bibiana Iraki of the ISA EFRI Center, and they will have a role in the program tomorrow as well. Last but not least, once again, thanks to Bomba Media, the Bomba Media team, for ensuring that this conference is productive for the online participants as well. Once again, guys, a sterling job. Let me try and share my slides for today. I'm hoping I can share a file. I think I can. and I hope it's visible for all of you. Maybe you can just give me a cue. If not, let me simply continue then. So having expressed my sincere appreciation for attending this conference and acting as a resource person, I would like to first of all emphasize that I will not only be international treaties and laws, but also give you a little bit of the reason as are important. They are important because they play a very important role in governing trade in genetically modified organisms and products from GMOs that could be imported into Kenya once a more facilitating trade regime is established and functional. And secondly, these international treaties provide very important guidance to member countries, including Kenya, how a robust national biosafety framework is defined and down the road implemented. So first of all, I would like to give you a little bit of the context in which we are speaking today. First of all, and this is obvious, I think, to most of you, genetically modified or biotech crops have been commercially cultivated since 1996. So we can safely say we've had a 20-year track record of safety. It's actually approaching 30 years as we speak. And also Dr. Miano this morning emphasized that very fact. We're not talking about a new and emerging technology. I think we have a pretty solid understanding as to how these crops behave in the field and how they behave in human and animal digestive tracts in terms of assessing our food and feed safety. Well, from a recent report, which the source is listed here, the GM Monitor published by BioInvestor, their most recent report from April this year indicates that 28 countries worldwide are actually commercially producing GM crops on about 210 million hectares last year, involving 10 different crops, of which the predominant ones are maize, soybeans, cotton, of course, as mentioned this morning, as well as rapeseed. But what's important to note is that besides these 28 countries, these crops, these products are imported and consumed by an additional 43 countries. So 43 countries have formal systems of approving GM commodities, GM agricultural crops for food and feed purposes. And this includes the European Union and member countries of the European Union. And I'll come back to that later. So we can safely say that consumers and livestock have safely consumed billions of portions of GM food and feed without any peer-reviewed publications or reports showing adverse or negative effects. It's also important to note that if we look at soybeans and maize, which are very important crops for food and feed worldwide, almost all exports, almost the entire international market for these crops are coming from important agriculture exporting countries that have very high adoption rates for GM crops, such as Brazil, Argentina, as well as the United States and Canada. So if we look at importing soybeans and maize as food or as feed, we can safely assume that what's on the world market is genetically modified. So based on this track record, I think we can safely say as well that there's a global scientific consensus that GMOs are safe. This is based on more than 3,000 scientific studies who found that GMOs are safe or as safe as their conventional counterparts, as the scientists say, safe to humans, animals, as well as the environment. We're also approaching some 4,500 case-by-case approvals by regulatory agencies around the world for food and feed purposes as well as for cultivation. And this includes, once again, scientific institutions in Europe, including the European Food Safety Authority, or EFSA. So if we project this on a world map and show the GMO producers in green, including a growing number on the African continent, those are the dark green countries. But if you add to those the yellow countries that have some form of authorizing importations of GMOs for food and feed and for processing purposes, this map is covering quite a large chunk of the globe. And I would like to highlight the European Union here, pictured in blue, where all member countries have authorized the importation of GMOs for food and feed purposes, based, first of all, on scientific opinions and very rigorous assessments by the European Food Safety Authority, complemented by national food and feed safety authorities, as well as the European Commission, who has the final word on deciding on GMO authorizations for imports as well as for cultivation. There's only one European country that is marked in dark green here, which is, those are actually two countries. Spain and Portugal are the only two European member countries who produce GM maize, BT maize, which is already also being discussed in Kenya for cultivation. And these two countries have done so successfully for well over 20 years by now. So this is important to show that Kenya and discussions in Kenya are not taking place in isolation. There are many countries around the world producing GMOs. There's a lot of data that can be gained from those countries. And in addition to that, there's around 45 countries or 43 that are authorizing those same crops for food and feed and for processing. So this is important to take into account as we start the technical sessions for this conference. Some of these points were mentioned this morning, or speakers following me will be building on those. So looking at global adoption rates, I'm showing these figures because it's important to keep in mind, once again, that for important internationally traded commodities such as soybean, maize, canola, and to a lesser extent sugar beet, those are important crops on international food markets. Countries adopting GM varieties for soybean and maize have very high adoption rates. Those very high adoption rates are predominantly found in countries such as Argentina, Brazil, the US, and Canada, which are the main agricultural exporters and feeding world markets internationally. So sourcing those products from international markets means you need to have a system in place to authorize importations of GM crops for food and feed purposes. And we'll come back to that point later. But this is, once again, an important part of the overall context in which we speak today. But let me turn briefly then to the existing regulatory guidance and international treaties that can help countries and have helped a country such as Kenya in establishing and defining its own national biosafety framework. So the first point I would like to emphasize, and I'll come back on that one later, is that there's a lot of guidance to be gained from the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety, specifically from Article 11 and Annex 2 that deals with trade in genetically modified commodities destined for processing as food and feed. But very important to keep in mind is that obligations under the Cartagena Protocol must be balanced with agreements under the World Trade Organization, for which Kenya is a member as well. And I'll be referring to the SPS agreement, the agreement on sanitary and phytosanitary standards, which actually falls within the mandate of KEFIS in Kenya, and we'll be hearing from Professor Mutui later today, as well as the WTO agreement on technical barriers to trade, or TBT. Importantly, these agreements do not only manage international trade, but also provide references to international scientific standards that countries can use to assess the safety or the risks of products that are intended for importation into a country such as Kenya. I'm adding a third bullet here of international guidance can also be gained from important trading partners. If you go to the websites of the US FDA, the Food and Drug Authority, you can find a long list of products that have been approved as safe for human and animal consumption, including GM products. And another important source of guidance that countries can tap for biosafety guidance are, for instance, the scientific opinions from the European Food Safety Authority, or EFSA, that make very rigorous assessments on the safety and potential risks of products that are destined for importation as food and feed into the European Union. All those opinions, scientific opinions, are made available online and can be tapped by national authorities. If we talk about trade at the continental level, regional level, of course, we need to keep in mind the African Continental Free Trade Area, the FCFTA, as well as agricultural guidelines and agricultural agreements under the East Africa Community, as well as COMESA, the Common Market for East and Southern Africa. But I will be, for the sake of time, not focusing on these regional policy-making bodies. What is important, of course, is that at the national level, those international and regional obligations must be incorporated into a robust national biosafety framework. And we'll be hearing from the NBA in this conference what this entails for Kenya. So I will not be expanding on that. But it's fair to say that biosafety and implementing a national biosafety framework has become an international obligation. And the central agreement underpinning that obligation is the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. That one entered into force in 2003. Kenya ratified the protocol, was one of the ratifying countries, which made entry into force a reality. And this Cartagena Protocol essentially covers transboundary movement, imports and exports of LMOs, living modified organisms, which is a subset of GMOs. An LMO is a living modified organism, so has not lost its ability not its viability and its ability to replicate in the field. So as opposed to GMOs, which could be living or non-living when they are processed into wheat flour, for example, and no longer able to replicate. So we are actually looking at imports and exports of animals and plants that are live, such as grains and seeds and animal tissues and live animals, for example, that are genetically modified. Most governments around the globe have ratified or acceded to the protocol by now. I think the total number of countries that have subscribed to the Cartagena Protocol exceeds 170. So that's basically all governments around the world, but some very important exceptions. And those exceptions include Argentina, Canada, and the USA, which, as we already mentioned, as we already know, are very important suppliers to international world markets for agricultural products and are the main GM crop exporters around the globe. So, and that means that agreements such as the World Trade Organization, to which those 3 countries, for example, are member, become more important in regulating trade with non-protocol members. But even more than 20 years after the the protocol was ratified, there's still an urgent need in many countries to translate these international obligations into a national framework of laws, regulations, and guidelines governing biosafety of GMOs. The problem, or part of the problem, is also that the protocol leaves significant flexibility to how countries develop their national biosafety frameworks and how they implement them. It's not a cookbook with standard recipes. It's very important for countries to decide on their own what legal framework they are going to follow and what institutional framework they have to implement obligations under the protocol. Well, it's fair to say that Kenya has always been a leading country, especially in East Africa and in fact on the African continent, and has been one of the forerunners in implementing a robust national biosafety framework, as we will see later in this conference. So some of the key concepts underpinning the protocol, as I already said, it applies to transboundary movements, so GMOs in transit and the handling and use of GMOs or LMOs. It applies to living modified organisms, so that are still viable organisms and able to replicate, and which possess a novel combination of genetic material. So transgenic living modified organisms are central to the biosafety protocol. The protocol addresses effects on the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity. Because it's a protocol to the Convention on Biological Diversity, this is the main focus of the protocol as well. But the protocol also allows countries to take into account any risks to human health as well as socioeconomic considerations. What's important for our discussions is that the protocol allows countries to integrate the precautionary approach in their decision-making on LMOs or GMOs. And the precautionary approach, I will leave you with the more detailed definition, but it actually allows countries to take precautionary measures even in the absence of scientific certainty on the risks or actual adverse effects of a GMO. So it allows countries to not authorize, to not allow the entry of LMOs into their countries using the precautionary approach without having scientific knowledge or scientific data to show and confirm the risks or actual damages that they may cause. So this is a bit of a problematic one and needs to be further defined by each country by itself, what this means in practice. Another cornerstone of the biosafety protocol is the advance informed agreement. For the sake of time, I will not be going into too much detail on this, but if you look at the notification procedures for living modified organisms, but especially the notification procedure for LMOs that are intended as food, for direct use as food and feed and for processing, or LMO FFPs, there is a simplified notification procedure laid down in the Cartagena Protocol with a checklist for risk assessment laid down in Annex 3 of the protocol that basically allows competent authorities, NBAs worldwide, to take a decision on importations of LMOs for food and feed and for processing. It's essentially a pre-authorization process that is based on scientific risk assessment before the introduction of an LMO takes place into the environment and or intended for food and feed and for processing. So although the precautionary principle is enshrined in the Cartagena Protocol, it also lays down a scientific authorization procedure that competent authorities can follow to arrive at a decision on the importation of a GMO. And again, it's important to translate those into national regulations and guidelines, such as Kenya has done. Now, since not every agriculture exporter is member of the Cartagena Protocol, but is member of the World Trade Organization, it is essential that member countries of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, balance their obligations and responsibilities under the Cartagena Protocol with those under the World Trade Organization. And the two key agreements here are the SPS agreement on sanitary and phytosanitary standards and the TPT agreement on technical barriers to trade. And especially the SPS agreement is important here because it allows countries to take trade measures to protect animal and plant life and human health from the introduction of plant and animal materials into the country. And it recognizes the right of WTO members to implement legitimate trade measures. And that could also be blocking certain importations. But it is important that whatever regulatory measure is taken to, for example, slow down or block the importation of an agricultural product, it can only be applied to the extent necessary to protect human, animal, or plant health. It must be based on scientific principles, and it cannot be maintained without sufficient scientific evidence. So although it's possible to take provisional trade measures under the SPS WTO agreement, you cannot do that without scientific reasoning, and you cannot maintain it infinitely. So a 10-year ban or more than 10-year ban without providing any further scientific justification is not allowed under WTO rules, under the SPS agreement. Another important agreement is the one on technical barriers to trade, which is an important one, guideline for how countries implement labeling regulations, for example, including GM labeling, and they must not create unnecessary barriers to trade, and they cannot be more restrictive to products coming from outside as compared to products that are produced locally. But especially the one
recording in progress.
But especially the agreement, the SPS agreement, is an important one to manage trade in agriculture products generally, including trade in GMOs. Now, the important thing is that those agreements marry trade with science and actually refer to important scientific standards and guidance that is laid down under the Codex Alimentarius for food safety, food and feed safety, the International Plant Protection Council, or IPPC, on plant health and pest risk analysis of plant materials, as well as the OIE, which is a French acronym, and I will not pester you with the full name, but that's an organization that lays down standards and guidelines dealing with animal health. So just take one example. So the SPS agreement, when countries take measures or precautionary measures on basis of perceived or real food and feed safety risks, the SPS agreements refers to the Codex Alimentarius in order to generate and provide scientific evidence or scientific guidance for doing so. So the Codex has a intergovernmental task force on food derived from biotechnology, which develops guidelines for food safety of products derived from biotechnology. So 4 important guidelines are listed, expand on any further, but it's really important that by becoming a WTO member, you subscribe to the SPS agreement, but automatically also have to ensure that those guidelines developed by the Codex Alimentarius working groups and task forces become part of your biosafety and food and feed safety framework. Now, many countries have incorporated all these treaties and standards and guidance in very practical checklist-based protocols for GM imports. And I'm listing the most important categories of information and data needs here. But many countries are moving to a system where they actually look at, well, where has this product been authorized already? Which countries have given approvals for this particular GM crop or GM animal or GM trade? And do they provide evidence of safety assessment? And are there any decision documents and authorizations in, for example, 5 or 10 or more countries that we believe have credible scientific risk assessments of a specific GM crop and GM trade? So this is important to follow. This is data transportability in action. Increasingly, countries are relying on food and feed safety assessments done elsewhere in order to help the authorization of specific products for use in their own territories. And these steps that are listed here have also been incorporated by Kenya's NBA in the proposed protocol for the importation of genetically modified food and feed, which I think is ready to be turned into action. So, with those few remarks, I'm arriving at my concluding remarks. Once again, we've seen what developments are at the global. We also see steady regulatory progress on the African continent, where the number of countries that have confined field trials in place, the number of countries that have biosafety laws or some form of a biosafety legal framework in place is steadily increasing. But also, and I turn to the right-hand side of this slide, and once again, I will make sure that the organizers have a copy of my slides so you can study this later. An increasing number of countries are complementing the biosafety laws and regulations with very specific guidelines governing, for example, stack trade events. So those are GM crops with multiple traits that have been derived from genetic modification. So this includes, for example, maize and cotton with not just insect tolerance, but also herbicide tolerance, or even maize varieties that have tolerance to multiple insects and multiple insect resistance traits, as well as resistance to multiple and a range of herbicides. So in some cases, some GM maize varieties include stacks of 5 or 6 different traits. Of course, Kenya has an excellent track record in testing drought-tolerant and insect-tolerant maize under the Tela Maize program, and this is one example of a stack trade event that is being rolled out in Nigeria as well as in South Africa as we speak, and will have great relevance to Kenya as well. So stack trade guidelines on genome editing are also being adopted in a growing number of countries on the African continent. So countries are also getting ready, and that includes Kenya, for this whole new wave of emerging technologies and products that are in the pipeline and will have great relevance to Kenya's agriculture and food security as well. So finally, this is my last slide. Would like to emphasize that we're looking at a safety track record that is nearing 30 years. GM crop production is steadily expanding geographically, as well as in terms of the range of crops and traits that is being addressed. And it's expanding where they are rigorously assessed and very strictly assessed for their environmental safety, as well as their food and feed safety. Now, following that, GM products are widely traded, especially crops like maize and soybeans on international world markets, with a new wave of products coming, such as GM wheat, drought-tolerant wheat, stacked trade events, as well as gene-edited crops, including soybean and maize, that are entering world markets in the near future. International treaties and standards provide very important guidance when we consider establishing national biosafety frameworks, and when we consider international trade in GMOs. But I should emphasize, moratoriums, trade bans must be provisional and based on science, and cannot be allowed for infinity. Another important conclusion is, by now you can trust your institutions. 15 years of capacity building and legal framework development, we can conclude that Kenya is duly following its responsibilities under international treaties, such as the Cartagena Protocol and the World Trade Organizations, with a functional national biosafety framework and competent authorities such as NBA and KEFIS and other supporting competent authorities. Countries, including Kenya, are introducing regulatory reforms that recognize the history of safe use of GMOs, and this is facilitating innovation that also benefits local companies and local institutions, such as Calro and others. China is one example of a country that is now rapidly introducing genetic modified varieties and allowing farmers access to those, as well as a growing range of gene-edited varieties that are also authorized for cultivation in China. South American countries, Argentina, very important example of where local companies, seed companies, and local universities are introducing gene-edited products for cultivation in Argentina. And Kenya is ready to move here as well, with a functional guideline, science-based guideline on gene editing, a science-based protocol for importation of GMOs as food and feed, and so on and so forth. So we have to keep considering those policy reforms aimed at streamlining processes, making sure that we incorporate lessons learned and data from more than 25 years of experience, using data generated elsewhere for our own decision making, as well as preparing for new applications in animal and crop biotechnology, including gene editing. At the national level, we have to continue coordinating regulatory policies within government agencies, with the private sector, and so on and so forth, so that we eliminate duplication of efforts and minimize the exposure to court cases and other legal challenges to authorizations. And finally, but not the least, we have to harmonize efforts at the sub-regional level, ensure that EAC member countries have comparable approaches to GMOs and biotechnology and gene editing, as well as continent-wide, with important initiatives spearheaded by the Africa Union, and more specifically the AUDA-NEPAD, African Biosafety Network of Expertise, one of our partner programs, who I hope are present in the room as well. So with that, I would like to thank you once again on behalf of PBS, a partner with NBA for well over 15 years, and a partner with Kenya for more than 20 years by now. And we look forward to continued collaboration, of course, with all of you. So thank you once again. And in case you have any questions, you can approach me by email or talk to Paul Chege or any of my colleagues in the room, or we entertain questions and comments in the discussion panel. Thank you so much, and back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Komen, for that good presentation on laws and regulations. And it's just good to know that there's been a lot of evidence and scientific work that has gone into supporting the development of the Cartagena Protocol. So we feel safe knowing that it's not a protocol that just came from nowhere. But it will also be good. Unfortunately, I don't know whether you'll be joining us in the afternoon panel. We are hoping you'll stay with us till the end of the session so that you can be able to maybe answer some of the questions that may come up from your presentation. Like one of the things I would want to really hear is what happens in the circumstances where we have the non-signatory member states, such as the US and Canada, who are also big producers of GMOs. How, what are the gaps that you're seeing, you're facing in regards to that? But I also appreciate the fact that you have raised the issues about regional and policy. I know there's countries within our region that have been able to adopt GMOs and the Cartagena Protocol and actually develop national law, while we have others that haven't within the East African community. And it would be good to know how that is also affecting our trade and industry, and also how it would affect our national GMO agenda moving forward. So we want to thank you once again for your session. And at this juncture, maybe I'll go to the next presenter. And we are going to be having our next presentation by Dr. Josphat Mushiri, who is the Acting Director of Biosafety Research and Compliance. Dr. Josphat Mushiri is a seasoned biosafety expert, currently, as I've mentioned, serving as the Director of Biosafety Research and Compliance at the National Biosafety Authority in Kenya. Dr. Mushiri is responsible for overseeing the safe development, transfer, handling, and use of genetically modified organisms and their derived products. He also plays a pivotal role in implementing the authority's core mandate, including conducting safety assessments, facilitating public participation, and ensuring compliance with national and international biosafety regulations. So Dr. Mushiri, karibu sana. He'll be walking us through the national regulatory framework governing the development and commercialization of GMOs in Kenya. Karibu. We see.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali, and the session moderator. We are still having some echoes. I know in the morning we had a series of echoes. I was told it is because of the speakers that were there, but now they are dismantled. We still have some echoes even now. Okay. I think the ICT team should be able to look at that. So thank you very much for that introduction. So I will be talking about the national regulatory framework governing the development and the commercialization of GMOs in Kenya. So the previous speaker has quite adequately elaborated the international framework, which is basically guided by two conventions and the protocols. So I will just put one slide so that I'm able to connect this treatise to the national framework. So at the global level, the first primary convention that governs general biodiversity and biosafety issues is basically the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD. That convention was signed and adopted in 1992. And some of the provisions of that convention provide that we have a very specific protocol that governs the safe handling and the use of GMOs. And that's what led to what we call the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. That the one we see in knowledge, that is the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. It was adopted in 2000. As the previous speaker said, currently it is ratified by more than 170 countries. And Kenya is among those countries that have ratified this protocol. Now, but there's also another protocol still tied to the CBD. It is called the Access and Benefit Sharing Protocol. At the national level, that is implemented by NEMA. It is a protocol that guides how genetic resources can be accessed and how the users or the owners of those technologies, genetic resources can be compensated. But at the NBA level, we implement the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety that was adopted in 2000. In terms of the ratification, if you look at the history of this protocol, Kenya was indeed the first country to sign off this protocol. And in the photo there, you can see our former president signing to that protocol, the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. That signing ceremony happened in Nairobi on 15th May 2000. And by signing that protocol, Kenya became one of the countries that signified that we are ready to adopt these modern biotechnologies, but with adequate safety measures in place. Now, when the government ratified that protocol in 2000, followed by the ratification in 2003, the government gradually started the domestication of that protocol. And the first thing that happened is the approval of what we call the National Biotechnology Development Policy that was approved by Cabinet in 2006. Immediately after that policy was approved by Cabinet, a bill was prepared and it was taken to Parliament, what we call the Biosafety Bill, and the Biosafety Bill was adopted or passed by Parliament in December 2008. After Parliament approved that bill, the Biosafety Bill, the then President, former President Moi Kibaki, enacted it in February 2009, and what we call the Biosafety Act of 2009. So when that act was enacted, immediately 1 year later, the government established the National Biosafety Authority, NBA, which is currently hosting this conference. And after that, we have had a set of regulations basically to help the implementation of the Act. So far, we have published 4 regulations. The first regulation is what we call the Biosafety Contained Use Regulation. That's a regulation that guides how research of GMOs will be undertaken in the country. The second regulation is what we call the Biosafety Export, Import, and Transit Regulation. That is a regulation that provides if a trader would like to import a already approved GMO in another country and it's coming to the Kenyan market for direct food and feed, that framework is provided by the second regulation, the Import, Export, and Transit Regulations. The third regulation is what we call the Biosafety Environmental Release Regulation. And these are regulations that provide how cultivation and commercial activities of GMOs will be undertaken in the country. The last regulation was published in 2012. It is called the Biosafety Labeling Regulations. And these are regulations that provide how GMOs, approved GMOs, will be packaged and labeled. Basically, to provide a framework of how consumers are able to identify which products are GMOs and which products are not GMOs. So basically, in a nutshell, those are the kind of the policies, the acts, and the regulations that guide the functions and the operations of the National Biosafety Authority. So we have the policy, we have the Biosafety Act, and we have 4 biosafety regulations. In terms of our mandate, the mandate of the authority. As I said, the authority was established in 2010, so we have been in this space for the last 14 years or so. And when we were established, you are given one very specific mandate, basically to oversight and supervision on control, handling, and the use of GMOs. Currently, NBA does not have any other mandate. Whenever we are doing our functions, we are just our role is basically to ensure that GMOs that are coming to the market, whether they are being at the research level or the commercial space, those GMOs are safe to humans and animal health, and also there's protection of the environment. So basically, we regulate and offer oversight on GMOs as NPA. In terms of specific functions, the first function is we consider and give permits for GMO research. That means no researcher, or either at the university or a research institution, can undertake GMO research without the approval of the NPA. So we are the people who consider to give permits. So we receive applications, we process, and we give permits. Once we give permit, we do what we call monitoring, basically to ensure that the licenses are complying to the provisions of the Biosafety Act and the regulations, and also the approval conditions that are given by the board. We also do what we call market surveillance and the GMO testing, basically going to the various markets, open markets, supermarkets, and the shops, aggregates, taking samples, and testing, basically to ensure that any product that is out there, if it is a GMO, it must be a GMO that is approved by NPA. If it is not approved by NPA, it should not be in the market. So that's what we call market on an annual basis. So the other function, we do capacity building on biosafety. Basically, we train various special groups, professional bodies, institutional biosafety committees. So we have a mandate to build capacity on biosafety and modern biotechnology. We also have a mandate to do public awareness, and what we are doing today is part of this mandate, basically creating awareness and education of GMOs. And most importantly, because I've said NBA is a national focal point to the Cartagena Protocol. At the national level, NBA is one that is given the responsibility of the government to ensure the provisions of that protocol are implemented. In terms of the scope of our regulation, our scope basically for now is genetically modified. So we are in the space of genetically modified plants, GMO plants. We also in the space of genetically modified animals and animal inputs, including veterinary vaccines that are GMOs, and the genetically modified microorganisms, including bacteria, viruses, fungi. Anything that is GMO must give, NPA must give the approval before any activities of those GMOs can proceed. Now, as we implement our mandate, the Biosafety Act also recognized GMOs also cut across various sectors of the economy. And in making our decisions, we are supposed to make very adequate consultations before we approve GMO projects. The Act identified 8 regulatory agencies that NBA must consult before decisions are made. We have the Department of Public Health, Department of Veterinary Services, because I've said there are GMOs that are animals. We have the Kenya Bureau of Standards. KEBS is the one that sets standards for various items. We have the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, and after this presentation, someone from KEFIS will be making a presentation. We also work with the KIPI, Kenya Industrial Property Institute, KIPI, because of the issues of the intellectual property rights. We also work with the KWS. In the event someone would like to do research on GMOs, but in the KWS basis, in that case, NBA is supposed to consult with the KWS. We also work with the PCPB, Pest Control Product Board, because if someone would like to modify, for example, a biopesticide or a biofertilizer, NBA has the overall mandate to consider that product. But since PCPB has that competence, we have to work with them And lastly, we have the National Environment Management Authority. So those are the 8 agencies that NPA consults with in the decision-making process. Now, in summary, all the I think you move from laboratory, the product is in the shelf. I just want to demonstrate the number of steps that GMOs go through. And the first stage is what we call the laboratory stage. Yeah? That's the stage scientists show the GMO component. Once that process is finished, that process can take about 2 or 3 years. Those GMOs are advanced to what we call the greenhouse evaluation. You advance GMOs that have been modified in the lab, you take them to the greenhouse, and at that stage, GMOs are not supposed to be consumed, either by humans or animals. After greenhouse evaluation, you go to what we call confined field trials. It is still a large-scale experiment, but at that stage, the GMOs are still not allowed to be consumed, either by humans and animals. So from laboratory, greenhouse, and field trials, in terms of the relevant regulations, is what we call the Biosafety contained use regulation, because that is purely research. Now, if there is success in those 3 stages, laboratory, greenhouse, and the field trials, the project then what advances what we call environmental release. Now the GMO is able to move from field trials to environmental release. It is at the environmental release that the members of the public will start interacting with the GMO. But at the first 3 stages, those are purely research, and those materials are not supposed to leave those facilities. Now, the environmental release is basically it's a GMO that has been approved. We have found it is safe for consumption, and it is safe to animals, and it is also safe to the environment for it to advance to what we call environmental release. Now, after environmental release stage, and before those varieties come to the farmers, there's a stage that other agencies have a responsibility. For example, there's an agency called the NEMA. NEMA does what we call environmental impact assessment. There's another agency called the KEFIS. KEFIS will do what we call the national performance trials. So those are key approvals that are required before a GMO can be taken to the farmer. So it is only after the NEMA and the KEFIS license that commercialization of a GMO variety. And after that variety is approved or commercialized, the last stage is what we call monitoring. We do monitoring in a later slide. But basically, in a nutshell, that's how GMOs are approved. From laboratory, they go to greenhouse, the field trials, environmental release. Then after that, that is the NPA process. After that, it is picked by KEFIS at the NEMA. After that, then it is released to the public. After that, we come back as NPA to do what we call the monitoring. In terms of who is doing GMO work here in Kenya, currently we have approved 5 institutions that are doing research on GMOs. The first one is CALO, Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization. And this CALO has several centers across the country. We also have the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, principally focusing on the GMO animals, but they also have some projects on plants. Kenyatta University, International Center for Insect and Physiology, ICIPE, at the Masitomorilo University of Science and Technology. This is in Kakamega. So basically, those are the institutions that are currently doing research on GMOs. Other institutions have applied. We are still looking at the applications. And once we approve, those institutions will also come into this database. But in a nutshell, how a GMO would be approved to go to the environment, to come to the farmers, it is also a process that is highly controlled. I just want to go briefly so that when you hear a GMO or BT cotton is coming to the farmer, you are able to appreciate the kind of assessments that were carried out at the back end. The process starts with an applicant making an application to NBA. That's what we're calling the application. It will come to NBA, we will screen the application. Once we screen the application, we will send it to at least 6 independent experts who are not working with the NPA, basically to look at that safety data that has been submitted by the applicant. We'll also send it to the 8, remember I talked about there are 8 regulatory agencies. We'll also send that application to those government agencies, basically also to evaluate that information. We'll send it to DPS, we'll send it to public health, we'll send it to all the relevant regulatory agencies. Another key element that is conducted for this kind of application, we do what we call public participation. We publicize the application in the newspapers. We also hold barazas where those GMO, where that GM crop is intended to be commercialized, and we also place it in our website. And the members of the public are given 30 days to interact with that application and give us feedback. Within 30 days, we correct all that feedback, and we analyze, and if there are issues that have been raised, we take them back to the applicant to correct them or to address them before we can progress the application. So we receive the applications, the expert opinions from the 6 experts, the opinions from the other government agencies, and the members of the public is analyzed. The issues that are raised are taken back to the applicant to address them. It is after that process is concluded that that application is advanced to the board to make a decision. That process takes about 150 days. Sometimes it takes longer. The board may either approve, it may reject, and in some instances it has been approved. In some instances it has also rejected. But once a decision is made, it will proceed to, if it is approved, it will proceed to the KEFIs and NEMA to do the EIA and the NPTs. If it is rejected, the applicant can appeal, and I will talk about appeal in this slide. Now, based on the decision of the board, if the board did not approve, the applicant can appeal to the board to review that decision. Alternatively, he or she can proceed to an institution called the Biosafety Appeals Board to launch an appeal that he or she is not happy with the decision of the NPA board. And if he or she is not happy by the decision of the Biosafety Appeals Board, he or she can also now proceed to the High Court. So you can see there are adequate measures to ensure that there is adequate level of scrutiny of decisions that are made by NPA. There are several layers, either the board itself, the appeals board, or the courts can also make decisions. But we have seen in some instances, when applicants are not happy, we find sometimes they just go to the High Court without following these other alternative channels of resolution. In terms of the status of the approvals, so far, the board has approved 3 GMO projects for environmental release. And the first one is what we call the BT cotton. When we asked whether we have farmers here, we have made sure that we have farmers who are cultivating BT cotton. This BT cotton was approved by the board in 2020. So far, it is being cultivated in more than 20 counties, and some of the farmers that are cultivating it are here. And later in the program, I think tomorrow, Thursday, the farmers will be able to give their experiences on the cultivation of BT cotton. Now, the second crop that has also been approved by the board, at least at the biosafety level, is what we call the BT maize. Farmers, when you go to the counties, the farmers who have been cultivating BT cotton, they have been asking what is the status of BT maize, because they also want the BT maize to go to them. So in terms of biosafety approvals, this maize has been approved by NPA. It has also been approved by NEMA. It has been approved by KEFIs. What is pending now is the applicants had said they would like to do demonstration plots or field trials, what we call the field demonstration plot, before farmers are able to access the seeds. But there are also other issues of the courts. The courts have said we put a break a bit until some matters are heard and determined with the courts. The third crop that has also been approved by the board is a virus-resistant cassava. And the key speakers today, Professor Miano talked about this. This cassava that has been improved to resist what we call the cassava brown streak disease, which is one of the most devastating diseases, particularly in Western and the coast region. At the NPA, it has been approved. It has also gotten the approvals by NEMA. I think KFS is doing the final touches of variety testing. So the other element I wanted to talk about, once NPA approves a GM crop or a GM animal, its mandate does not end there. There's what we call post-commercialization monitoring, and monitoring requirements as per the Act requires that once a GMO is approved to go to the farmers, NPA is supposed to track it for a cumulative 20 years. So for those who have been cultivating BT cotton, they have seen our inspectors going to their farms, basically asking questions whether they have any issues that they have with the BT cotton. And we will continue doing that until 2040. Because the cotton was approved in 2020, we are supposed to monitor it for 20 years. So up to 2040, you'll be seeing our inspectors there, so long as that BT cotton is with the farmers. Now, why we do this is basically to assess if there is any adverse or any unanticipated effects, because we can do an assessment at the preliminary stage, but once the seed is given to the farmers, the cotton starts behaving otherwise. So that's why we come every year. We will continue coming, and if there is any unanticipated effect, NB is required to take a regulatory decision and recall that product. So far, we have not found any adverse effect. The farmers, I think, will be giving their experience on that date. From a regulatory point of view, we have not found any adverse effect on the cultivation of BT cotton. So in terms of the other additional measures that NB has put in place, over and above the inland market surveillance, we have also been able to open offices at key entry points. We have an office in Mombasa, we have an office in Lugaruga, we have an office in Tabeta, Namanga, Busia, and Malamba. Next year, we intend to open additional offices like in Moyale and Isebania. The role of these offices is to ensure that no GMOs, because I think the previous speaker talked, GMOs are now being cultivated in many countries. The purpose of these entry points is to ensure that any GMO that is coming to the country is approved GMO, and any GMO that is not approved is not coming to Kenya. So we have put those regional offices. We have also been there with the testing capacities of consignments that are coming so that they're able to take samples and do GMO testing. I'm almost done. Now, this is like a question. How do you identify a product as GMO? When you listen to, or when you walk to in the street, or when you listen to the radios in the morning, you find the people calling. They say we have seen a big pumpkin. We have seen a big chicken. We have seen a big thing. We have seen a big thing in the supermarket. And they suspect this must be a GMO. Anything big in this country is attributed to GMOs. Now, what we are telling the public, you cannot tell a product if it's a GMO either by size, by color, or by shape. So that's the message we want you to take home. That don't see big things. When you see a tishokasha banana, you attribute it to this must be a GMO. Now, GMOs can only be identified through GMO testing and labeling. at our entry points, the regions that I've talked about, if you'd like to know whether a product that you have could be GMO, you just need to take it to those offices, and they will be able to test, and they will tell you whether it is a GMO or not. At the distribution level, we have come up with a label that any GMOs that NB will approve to go to the market, it will have this label where it says contains approved GMO. And it is not to discriminate one product against the other, or to indicate this product is more safe and the other one is not safe. Any product that NB will approve, we are assuring the public that GMO is sold. Why we label is basically what someone talked about human rights. People want to know what product they are buying. So labeling is not done because of safety, because any GMO that we approve, we are guaranteeing safety of that GMO to the extent of the GMO component. So we also label this product because I've said we do market surveillance. So if there's a need to recall a product from the market without any label, it would be difficult for us. Because as I said, you can't tell a GMO by size or shape or by color. It is through this label that NBA as regulators are able to trace the products that we have approved in the market. Which GMOs are approved? So at the global level, we have more than 30 genetically modified crops so far approved for cultivation. So more than 30 countries have approved GM crops, and about 70 countries have approved GM for food and feed consumption. The first GM crop to be approved was a genetically modified tomato, and it was approved in the USA. But the first product to go into big scale trade was the maize that was approved in 1986. But as the keynote speaker said, so far we have had a history of GM crops for the last 30 years. We are in 2025. The first GMO that was approved was in 1984. So we are able to look at the history. The countries have approved, because even those countries, they also monitor the populations, the environment, to see if there is any adverse effect after consumption or after cultivation of those GMOs. Now, most GM crops are, however, maize, cotton, soya, and canola. So those are the most commonly traded. But in terms of the total crop approval, we have about 30. Now, when you go to the field of animal science, 2 genetically modified animals have been approved. And the first one is what we call the salmon fish. This fish is approved in Canada and the USA. And we also have genetically modified mosquitoes. Someone was asking why someone is interested to modify mosquitoes. Why people are modifying these mosquitoes is basically to manage malaria and another disease called dengue fever. Those mosquitoes have been commercialized in Brazil. Other countries, even in Burkina Faso, they are doing research. Even Tanzania are doing some research on genetically modified mosquitoes, even Uganda. But in terms of approvals at commerce, we have Brazil, which has approved mosquitoes. Now, at the local level, as I said earlier slides, the only that today is only BT cotton. We do not have any other GM in the market. So whenever you go to the supermarket, you go to the circles, those products are not GMOs, other than cotton. And I know there are farmers who are farming BT cotton here. When NB approves other products, I think it will be able to publicize that information. But for now, it is BT cotton. The other crops, the BT maize and the cassava, are almost that stage, but not yet there. Which government agencies are involved in the approval of GM products? There are several agencies, and the first agency to assess and approve or to make approval for GMO is the National Biosafety Authority, because that is the body that is given the overall mandate on GMOs. The other agencies cannot touch the GMO until NBA gives an approval. So the first agency to approve is the National Biosafety Approval. It gives what we call the Biosafety Approval document. The other agency is what we call the NEMA. NEMA does the environmental impact assessment. They give EIA license. The third agency is KEFIS. They do the national performance trials. And the last agency that gives the final nod that a variety can go to the farmers is the Ministry of Agriculture. They have a committee called the National Variety Release Committee. It is hosted by the Ministry of Agriculture. It is that committee that can officially release any variety to the farmers. So every time farmers are asking when is this variety is coming, the final person to approve a variety, whether it is GM or non-GM, is the Ministry of Agriculture. And lastly, are GMOs safe to eat? And that is, it has been a debate whether this technology offers products that can easily be consumed by the population. And GMOs are assessed on case by case. We can't say, we do not have like a blanket statement that GMOs are safe or GMOs are not safe. So we say GMOs that have been approved by the National Biosafety Authority are safe. Energy product that we have said this one is safe, we guarantee to the extent that that is a GMO, that product is safe. Now, when it comes to other parameters, for example, aflatoxins, because a GM can also be affected by other pests, it can also be affected, by example, the other agencies will take that mandate to check those other parameters. First, we just check whether that the GM component is safe. And before we say a product is safe, there are key tests that we usually do. And the first test is what we call the food safety assessment. We check that GMO. We check what has been introduced by the scientists, because they have modified. We'll check whether what they have introduced is safe. We'll also take samples. We'll do a compositional analysis. We'll check the proteins, the starch, the minerals, because ideally this product should not be different from the conventional product that farmers are used to. So we are going to do a comparison between the GM product and the product that has the GMO. We'll also do whether it has any allergies. There are people who are very allergic to certain foods. We'll see whether if there's any allergy that is being introduced by the GMO. We are not saying that all allergies are attributed by GMOs, but if the GMO introduces any allergic reactions that are not known to that food cannot be approved by the NBA. And the other thing that we check in terms of food safety assessment is whether there is any toxic compound that are in that food. It's only after those tests that we can say that food is safe for consumption. So the other blood test that is done by the NPA is what we call the environmental safety assessment. And this one we are looking at the impact of the GMO on the general environmental issues. We want to see if bees, for example, the honeybees, if they feed on the pollen of that crop, is there any adverse effect on the bees? You know, there are people bees have a very critical function in the ecosystem. They do pollination. They also give us honey. Now, we do not want a technology that when bees consume on the pollen, those bees get eliminated. So we do specific tests to confirm that technology does not have any negative impact on these beneficial insects. We also check whether there will be any loss of biodiversity, whether that crop would become what we call the superweed. For those who come from Baringo, there's a plant called, it's called what? Baringo, ile inakula na buzi. Madege, yeah. So that madege came as a good plant. It was introduced by the government to check the certification. Then all of a sudden it became a super weed. We do not want any GMO that has been approved by NBA. Once it goes to the farmers, it becomes like the madenge. And there are specific tests that I will do to confirm that any GMO that is going to the farmer is equivalent to the varieties that those farmers are used to, other than what the scientists wanted to modify. So in the short, we are saying it is only after this test, the food safety assessment, the environmental safety assessment, that NBA can make a decision to approve that product. And once we approve, we will put a label that this is a product that has gone in our hands and it is safe for human consumption. So in a nutshell, that's the national framework for assessment of GMOs. We are the National Biosafety Authority, and we are the host. We are the organizers of this conference. And once again, I want to welcome you to this conference. Thank you very much, moderator. Ivan, you are next.
Okay. Maybe before I introduce Ivan, I just want to speak just something brief about Dr. Mushiri's presentation and the work being done by the Biosafety Authority. I was a very skeptical person from the public health side, I was of, GMOs are going to be giving us problems, But just watching what they have been doing, especially the stringent measures they have to approve the research protocols that regarding the research being done in country. I was actually talking to Professor this morning, and we're talking about the processes he's had to go through to get the clearance for his research in millets in Western Kenya, isn't it? Yeah, just seeing that the amount of work that goes in, the inclusivity, where it's not only one agency, but they actually deal with several agencies that would clear different components depending on the protocol. The transparency of the system has given me as a person a lot of confidence, and I have since transformed to become a champion for their work, as well as what we see with the surveillance. It was quite impressive to see one of the surveillance outcomes, and they had run surveillance across the country, and you could clearly see that there are no GMOs in the country other than BT cotton, which has been approved. So the products we are eating right now are GMO free. And when we get GMOs, for sure they would have been gone through all the clearances and gone through all the relevant science. So it's as a board member, I feel very proud to be associated with this institution. We'll have a bit of a change in the program. We'll have two other presenters. We brought them forward to accommodate them in this program. So at this juncture, we'll not have, we actually have the presentation on the role of KEFIS in the commercialization of the GMOs, but we'll have it done by Dr. Ivan Obare. He'll be doing it on behalf of Professor. Ivan Obare is a principal seed plant inspector at Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Services in Nairobi. He holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Agriculture Biotechnology from Moi University and a Master's of Science degree from the University of Eldoret. He is currently completing his PhD studies in plant biotechnology at the Egerton University in Joro. He has worked with KEFIS for 13 years and has vast experience in phytosanitary certification, seed certification, plant variety registration and release, import and export certification of plants and plant-related products, and GMO-related matters in Kenya. He coordinates the Biosafety desk at KEFIS and coordinates and manages the plant health and molecular labs in KEFIS, at the headquarters, that is, where he undertakes GMO detection, quantification, and identification. He also participates in the training of visiting scientists, interns, and students who are sent to his agency for attachments. He is an editor of the Africa Phytosanitary Journal and a member of good standing in the Plant Breeders Association of Kenya. He is an independent expert, reviewer of the National Biosafety Authority on risk assessments and risk management of GMOs. And he started the risk assessment reviewing work in 2022, which he's been carrying out to date. Karibu sana, Ivan.
Thank you, Chair, for the welcome. And thank you all for having us as KEFIS. I'm making this presentation on behalf of Professor Theophilus Mutui, who could not be able to be with us today. And before I start to make this presentation, we came as a team. Let me recognize our team. Maybe wherever they are, they can stand up so that people can be able to see them, know them, so that we can, in the course of the conference, you can know, and if you have any questions on KEFIS, you can know the people to ask the questions. So, fellow colleagues from KEFIS, you can stand wherever you are so that the delegates can be able to see you. Thank you. Those are the people that we've come with, and so you can interact with them freely during this the conference. Thank you. You can resume your seats. And maybe before I start, I was sitting there and I was seeing people. You know, it's after lunch, huh? And being after lunch, our bodies tend to take a rest. So we can stand and then we stretch in like 30 seconds. And then with that, you can be able to start this presentation. So let's the best. I'm seeing there are people who are still on their seats. You can, okay. Yeah, thank you. So we can resume our seats and start this presentation. And the presentation that KEFIS is making is on the role of commercialization on GMOs in Kenya. And this presentation comes at a time when we are talking about 13 years later, building trust and ensuring safety of GMOs. Okay? And I'm glad to make this presentation because we are talking about commercialization. 13 years before, we were talking about research. We are talking about we didn't have a regulatory framework. But currently we have a regulatory framework. We've done our research. We have products. And now we are talking about commercialization. And KEFIS is a Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, which is under the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Development, whose mission is excellence in plant health and quality assurance in agriculture. And our mission, which will take us there to our vision, is to assure plant health, quality of agricultural inputs and produce towards a food secure nation and safe trade. Mark there towards a food secure nation and safe trade. So whatever we are doing at KEFIS, we want to ensure as a nation we get to food security and safe trade. Because as you will see from the presentation, we facilitate trade, and trade comes with its own challenges. which can introduce pests to the country. So where our offices around the country, we have our headquarters, which is based at Karen. We have our Kitale regional office, and I know maybe some of you have interacted with KEFIS offices. And whichever service that you may have sorted from KEFIS, maybe with that you were able to interact with a specific office of KEFIS. Because our various offices, there are those offices which have got specific activities. For example, for our Kitale regional office, it undertakes a lot of seed certification, and we also have at that office we have major entry and exit points. So maybe you've interacted with when you're exporting plant or plant related products with the offices. At JKIA, this is also our other major exit and entry point, and this office, under it we have the Namanga, Loitoktok, ICD, that is the internal container depot. We also have Embu regional office, and this office has got, it's manning various entry points, that is like Moyale, Timau, Nyeri, Mandera, and Isiolo. We have the plant quarantine station, because we are alive to the fact that as we are doing trade, there are those commodities which come with the risk of introducing pests to the country. So this office is specifically for quarantine issues. Also this office hosts our labs, which normally undertake testing of these materials which can come with risks to the country. We have Kisumu regional office, and it we have Busia, Isibania, Bita, and Kisumu Airport. We also have the Nakuru regional office. We also have a Naivasha office. This office was put forward because to cater for our growers, we have a lot of our growers, especially for cut flowers and plants for planting. So this office majorly serves this region where we are for this conference. We also have our major entry and exit point, that is Mombasa. And under Mombasa, apart from it being a major entry because of the port, it also mans the Taveta, Lunga, Bura, Shimoni entry and exit points, and Lamu. KEFIS mandate. So the KEFIS mandate, we have 4 functional areas. And one of it is phytosanitary services. We have seed certification. We have plant variety testing and protection. And we have laboratory analytical services. So on the sanitary and phytosanitary, these are matters to do with plant protection, where KEFIS implements the CAP 324, that's the Plant Protection Act, because on this act, Plant Protection Act gives KEFIS its mandate to protect the country from entry of pests. Because as we are facilitating trade, there are those commodities which can come with pests, so we regulate matters to do with plant protection, import regulation and inspection. For import regulation, before you import anything to the country, you must be given a plant import permit by KEFIS. And this plant import permit is usually informed by an activity known as a pest risk analysis. So on this pest risk analysis, we check all the pests and diseases that are there where you are getting your material and are not here in Kenya. Okay? With this risk analysis, we come up with condition. You are bringing material from Uganda. Maybe you are bringing a banana from Uganda. And there are those diseases of banana which are in Uganda. So as KEFIS, after we've done our risk analysis, we will tell you this material, before you bring it to the country, make sure it is free from this virus, this bacteria, this fungi, or this insect pest. So with that, we are able to do the import regulation, and also at our entry and exit point, we undertake inspection on this commodity. Similarly to we do export certification by undertaking grading and inspection of plants and plant produce at the points of entry and exit, so that as we are facilitating trade for export, we are making sure that these commodities are meeting the other countries' requirement. And when they meet the other countries' requirement, we declare that in a phytosanitary certificate. So any export commodity that leaves the country, that is plant and plant-related product, sanitary of KEFIS, that has been issued by KEFIS, that says that this commodity is free of this and this pest, and has met the other country requirement. We also undertake plant quarantine control, and on plant quarantine control, these are the new pests that can be introduced in the country. Before we give you the permit, there are those permits which we issue under a Q label. That means that before we issue you that permit, you ought to have established a quarantine facility that has been inspected by KEFIS, and as if it has met requirement, you will be given a go-ahead. You bring those materials, and then they go to the quarantine facility. And then in the quarantine facility, KEFIS will monitor those materials so that we don't bring deceased material to the country. KEFIS is also the liaison office for the International Convention relating to plant protection, that is the IPPC. The IPPC is the one that comes up with the standard, the international standard for phytosanitary measures, meaning that whatever standard we are applying in Kenya on plants and plant-related products, our counterpart, maybe in another country like Tanzania, they are observing the same, so that we are having a level playing ground. So KEFIS is the liaison office for the IPPC. Also, we are in consultation with other relevant agencies. KEFIS develop and implement standards for from plant material, and at the same time, there are those delegated duties that KEFIS has delegated to entities, majorly on treatments. For example, like right now, our mangoes are accessing the Jordan market, and before we access the Jordan market, because we have fruit flies in the country, we were told by the NPPO of Jordan, before these mangoes come to our country, make sure they undergo a treatment. And the treatment that was put forward was a treatment of hot water treatment. So this treatment, we usually audit the treatment of hot water to make sure that during our audit process, we make sure that this water is not hot to boil the mangoes, okay? And to make sure that it meets the requirements that was stated with our trading partner. So with such kind of delegated duties, KEFIS approves and supervises facilities of plant products and regulated article. The other treatment that we normally approve and supervise is wood treatment facilities. Maybe most of you have interacted with these timber treatment facilities of wood pallets. Wood pellets are usually involved in transporting plant and plant-related product, the cargo. So the pellets can be pathways which can introduce pests to the other country. So before these pellets are used, they are supposed to be treated. And most of the time is heat treatment. So KEFIS goes to those facilities that undertake such treatment, and we audit, we approve. If they meet the requirements, we approve, and from time to time we can be able to supervise what they are doing. And this work is done by the KEFIS office where the facilities are. The other mandate of KEFIS is undertaking plant variety testing and protection, and on this we are implementing the Seeds and Plant Variety Act and its regulation. And on this plant variety testing and protection, we undertake plant variety testing and we undertake the two testing. The previous speaker talked about national performance trial and the DUS. Those are the testing that we undertake. And if the candidate material meets the requirements as per the variety release regulation, it's recommended for release. We also coordinate plant variety release. We administer grant of the plant breeders' rights, and we also the liaison office for the International Convention relating to plant variety protection. That's the UPOV. The other KEFIS mandate is we undertake seed certification, and again here we are implementing the Seeds and Plant Variety Act, and we regulate matters relating to seed certification, which include seed merchant and grower registration. So for any person who wants to deal with seed, must be registered with KEFIS. We undertake field inspections to make sure that our crops are meeting the requirements. If we are dealing with maize seed, we have a standard for maize and also for the other crops. So we make sure that in our inspection we follow what is there in the standard, and if the crop has met the criteria, it's passed. We also undertake seed testing and labeling. We also undertake sampling and testing. We also undertake post-control just to make sure it's a quality assurance mechanism, just to verify what our inspectors are doing in the field. And there are various offices which undertakes this post-control depending on the crop. And we also undertake post-certification. Once KEFIS has done certification, we also go out to those outlets which sell this seed. We go there to make sure that whatever was certified is whatever is there in our outlets. We also go to ensure that the person who is having this outlet is licensed by KEFIS, and at the same time, it's usually a good opportunity for KEFIS to get any complaint that is there in our outlets that are selling seed. We also promote seed trade by complying with set regulation and agreement, and in consultation with other relevant agencies, we develop and implement standard for seed. We are also the liaison office for the International Convention relating to seed certification. Those are things to do with the OECD seed schemes of the very. The other mandate of KEFIS is to undertake analytical services. 2012 gives KEFIS the mandate to establish service lab, and one of the service lab that we have is the analytical services, which undertakes testing and testing of agro inputs and produce. We also undertake testing of water for irrigation. We also undertake testing of soil. Okay, this lab also undertake pest residue analysis, and also this lab ensures that our fresh produce, before they access the export market, we are able to meet the maximum residue limits of the requirements of this pesticide. We also support Kenya to meet our major markets for beans and peas is EU, and from time to time we get notification that some of our produce is not meeting this requirement. So this lab facilitates training of our farmers who are growing this produce. It also undertake testing to make sure that whatever goes out has met the requirements. And as I said earlier on, this lab undertakes water analysis for irrigation suitability. We also undertake fertilizer analysis. We also undertake soil analysis for fertility evaluation, and appropriate recommendations are given. And as we are talking it as a service, being a service, there are those costs which KEFIS charge to recoup such services, whatever was used in the analysis. We also undertake heavy metal analysis in fresh produce, aflatoxin analysis in maize, nuts, and other commodities. And also the lab, with the capacity that it has, it also undertake the pesticide formulation analysis just to check on the quality of pesticide active ingredient. So back to the role of KEFIS on commercialization of GMOs. And here we have we can call it two categories of our role on commercialization. We have the pre-commercialization activity, and we have the commercialization activity. Before these materials get to our farmer, it's supposed to be released as a variety. And for a candidate material to be released as a variety, it has to undergo the two types of tests. That is the DUS test and the National Performance Trial evaluation. So that is for the pre-evaluation. And then for the commercialization is what I've talked about. Is now the seed certification that I've talked about. And on seed certification, there are issues to do with the registration and licensing of seed merchants, seed growers, and seed sellers. We have field inspection, process inspection, sampling and testing, post-control, and post-certification. And we are saying GMO crops undergo the same variety release and certification process like any other conventional crop. This activity are preceded by environmental release by NBA, and the presenter who was here before elaborated well on the environmental release. we cannot, this candidate cannot go to the next level of the two tests that I've talked about without getting the approval by NBA of the environmental release. So, according to the variety evaluation and release regulation, only variety officially released can be commercialized. Only variety officially released can be commercialized. And for this variety to be released, they must undergo these two tests. That is the DUS and the NPT. For DUS, it determines if a variety is distinct, uniform, and stable. Okay? And the purpose of DUS is to establish varietal identity, release of new variety for commercialization, generate descriptor of that variety, grant plant breeders' right, and also varietal DUS. And from and see, when you say something is distinct, it should be distinct with from what is there in the market. It should be uniform, and it should be stable over generation. For the NPT, these are trials undertaken. For example, if like cassava, the GM cassava that we've talked about since morning. For cassava, it was undertaken in various sites where it is able to show the characters well, and where it was able to get the full potential of the variety for it to be for the characters to be expressed. And for the NPT, it's usually laid down as an experiment, and just like any other scientific experiment, you must observe certain parameters. For example, there should be a randomization, there should be a check. A check is a variety that has already been released, and it was managed by the client, but KEFIS is the one who was taking data. And what are the purpose of these NPTs? Is to determine the agronomic potential of a new variety before it is released for commercialization. To determine the agronomic potential, the candidate varieties are planted alongside the existing checks and performance gauge to ensure only superior varieties are released. Okay. The general requirements for GM is environmental release of the GM by NB as prescribed by the Biosafety Act. The duration of the trials for the NPT is 2 seasons as per the variety evaluation and release regulation. And for crops requiring tests for special attributes, the site must enable introduction of the site must enable testing of such induced traits. The trial site should enable determination of the trait of interest, and the trial shall clearly be labeled consisting of GM material. For example, if for the insect resistance that the BT maize, it was controlled to introduce reasonable population to enable comparison, introduction of the insect itself. If it's a herbicide tolerance trial for the GM, the specific herbicide shall be sprayed to enable the trait efficacy testing. And if it's for drought tolerance, they will allow expression or should provide a rain-free period where irrigation can be avoided, so that the trait of like this one for drought tolerance can be able to manifest itself. And yield is the most important consideration, and other characters must also be assessed by field observation and laboratory analysis. For some varieties, special attributes such as insect resistance and herbicide tolerance will be the primary observation of interest. If you are doing a BT, insect resistance will be of interest. If it's a herbicide tolerance NPT, the herbicide trait will be of interest. And here we are saying also biochemical tests may supplement information generated in the site. But this is not a must requirement. It's just to supplement. If it's there, it's okay. So the procedure for variety release is application for NPT by submission of seeds and payment of fees. Because there are those costs that are involved, so there must be fees. There are fees which are prescribed for entry if it's for NPT and also DUS. The variety is tested for 2 seasons, as I said. The data is analyzed for each season of testing with combined data analysis as second season of testing. NPT report is prepared by KEFIS after that data analysis at the end of each season. And NPTC is convened to discuss the report. After each season, the data is analyzed and then this committee is convened to discuss the report. NPTC recommends for release variety that meet the release criteria to the NVRC committee, and the NVRC deliberates on the recommended variety with consideration of the DUS report and make decision on the variety to be released. New varieties are gazetted and listed in the National Crop Variety List, and the breeder can now multiply and sell the new variety. So what is the status as at now? We have 14 varieties of GM cotton that have been officially released for commercialization. We can get these varieties in the National Variety Release List of 2025, which is domiciled at the KEFIS website. We also have 3 varieties of BT maize that have been released. And NPT and DUS for the 8 cassava varieties has been completed. Report was presented to NPTC in May. It was deliberated, and we are awaiting NBA approval and NVRC approval. So for the commercialization activity, and as I earlier stated, these are activities that now, after a variety has been officially released, now it's now for the seed to get to the farmer. And we are saying, what are the objectives of seed certification? To ensure that the seed sold to the farmers meet minimum government set quality standards so as to maximize the crop production. The other objective of seed certification is to promote local and international seed trade by complying with seed regulation and agreements. Activities of seed certification. We have, as I said earlier on, if you want to engage in seed, you're supposed to be registered by KEFIS in either as a merchant, as a grower, as a seller, okay? And after that, we have the field inspections. And for field inspection, each crop has got its own standard. If it's maize, if it's potato, it has got its own standard. We also have processing inspection where the seed is going to be processed after harvesting. We also have the processing standard. For crops such as maize, sampling, a sample is taken to check for disease such as maize lethal necrosis. So a sample is taken to a lab, maybe at Nakuru, Google, the headquarters, and then they check for those diseases. If it's potato, we usually check for bacterial wilt, that is Rastonia. So the seed, during a sample is taken to our labs, and then if we ascertain that lot is free from the disease, the process can continue. We also undertake post-control, and as I said, post-control is just a quality assurance. It's a self-check where KEFIS undertakes, it takes the samples, and then these samples are planted just to check what our inspectors, the quality of work they did during the inspections. And also we undertake post-certification, whereby after the seed has been certified and has gone to the outlets, KEFIS goes to the outlets to check if whatever was certified is whatever is there in the outlets, and at the same time to make sure that these outlets meet requirements so that they can sell or rather they can stock seed. At the same time, this post-certification offers an opportunity to get feedback from our outlets. So for seed certification for GMO crops, follow the same procedure for conventional crops. Additional requirements for GM crops is full environmental release as per the biosafety regulation on environmental release, confirmation of the event at the lab level. If it's BT cotton, we take a sample to our labs, and then we confirm if the event is there. If it's maize, the same. Cassava, the same. And also, we label the seed as GMO so that our farmer can be aware that this is GMO. Also, we are there in the import and export of GMO seed. And as we are saying, as KEFIS, before we issue a permit of importing GMO, we are supposed to get an approval from NBA, and then we use that approval to process the permit, because as much as the seed will be GM, this seed also can be a pathway of introduction and spread of pests. So we make sure that the seed, before it's brought or goes out of the country, meets the phytosanitary requirement. And if it's an export, the same way, we make sure that the export, we get an approval from NBA. This approval, we use it to process the phytosanitary certificate. And this phytosanitary certificate, apart from it declaring that this is a GMO, it will also declare that this material is free of certain pests as observed in the plant import permit of the other country. Also, in the import and export of GMO, we ensure GMO status of crops such as soybean, canola, and maize from countries commonly growing GMOs has been declared before approving imports. The same way, currently we are getting countries such as our neighbors. Before we take to them our seed, they want us to confirm by testing that the seed is free of GMO or any event. So, and on that, KEFIS make sure that this seed meets the requirements of the other country. So the status of seed certification of GM crops, we have protocols that are in place, and during most of these GMO development protocols of these commodities, we called in the various crop experts, various stakeholders, so that we had an agreed document. So we have a seed certification protocol for GM maize, cotton, and cassava. And with that, we end this presentation. So,
So you should.
okay. Sawa sawa. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for that presentation. Clearly, it shows a very strong symbiotic relationship between MBA and KEFIS. I have a few questions, but I'll save them for the panel regarding the clearances for export trade and how they can be made easier for farmers to bring down their costs of their production costs. Should be brought down a bit lower so that the product is a bit affordable, more competitive. But we'll leave it for the panel session. We are going to have one last presentation. We are bringing one of the presentations from Thursday forward, and this is going to be a presentation done by Fanuel Lubanga on the cost-benefit analysis of BT cotton commercialization in Kenya. I trust Fanuel is with us. Karibu. Mr. Fanuel is the Deputy Director. Okay. The Deputy Director of Market Research and Product Development at the Kenya Agriculture and Food Authority. He leads initiatives aimed at improving market research, product development, and value addition in the agricultural sector to boost competitiveness and sustainability. Mr. Lubanga has played a key role in revitalizing Kenya's cotton industry by supporting capacity building of cooperatives, enhancing governance, and strengthening market linkages. His efforts focus on organizing production systems and improving farmers' business skills to increase productivity and profitability, contributing significantly to the country's agricultural growth. Welcome, sir.
Let me start by, first of all, thanking National Biosafety Authority for inviting us to be part of this scientific community and to share a thought-provoking experience of BT cotton. And we will leave it to you to help us think through on how we can even do it better. Just like other people have said, I've been part of the journey for NBA, perhaps attending 50% of their conferences. And this is because we were closely collaborating in ensuring that BT cotton is commercialized. I'll be very fast because of time, that cotton is now a national priority today, and it is supposed to help us reduce the import bills of lint and seed cake, particularly seed cake has been marked as one of those prime products that we need to produce in this country, and that by 2027, we should be doing 50% of whatever we import from the region. And as soon as possible, we should have 100% of our local production satisfying our consumption. Today, cotton produced mainly for lint is contributing Kenya shillings 991 million based on 2024 statistics. But this does not include value addition of cotton seed, sorry. So it does not include the value of seed cake, and it does not include the value of biofuels. The textile, especially at garment level, about 56.8 billion worth or value of garments are exported from the EPZ. Unfortunately, they are not integrated to the local cotton production system. In 2024, we've been able to produce our highest level of lint right from the time we introduced BT cotton in this country. We were more or less producing below 10,000 bales, but for 2024, we have now produced 11, nearly 12,000, and meeting the local consumption at the current production level, at the current capacity. But we are hoping that good signals of trade and production should be able to propel the demand for lint to 100,000 bales, because many of our mills, the 3 mills, have that capacity. That is thicker cloth mills, Rivertex and Supra are able to consume about 100,000 bales. This is how we have fared on over the years. I've picked the year 2020 because that is the year we started, if I can say, making some plays with the BT, because it had not been fully approved. But we were very anxious to ensure that we have it in the field. We even sidestepped a process which we later on caught up with, that is environmental social impact assessment. But so you will see 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, the area is more or less the same, except for 2024. The reason why this happens like this is that BT cotton is expensive, and it would 100% government, nearly 100% government subsidy as we began, and bringing people, stakeholders on board to support farmers with seed was a bit difficult. It takes time, and therefore that's why we stagnated a bit. But when you look at 2024, you will see a high increase in the area, meaning that we had now brought on board people, companies, government agencies that would help us support farmers with BT cotton seeds. When you observe the yield, you see a fluctuation, and at one point nearly static, meaning that the farmers were not improving their skills in production. That can be the implication. But I know the scientific world can tell us more around it. So this is our achievement up to 2024. And I want to make a disclaimer that this achievement is not one of the best, especially for the promise that BT cotton had for the country. So BT cotton, a good history has been presented to the plenary on how it all began. 2018, 2019, national performance trials. Some ban is given, then it is lifted in 2019 by the cabinet. Then National Biosafety Authority issues an environment release approval in 2020. And then on 15th of May 2020, 4 types of BT seeds are approved with a yield of 1,250 kgs per acre, according to the National Performance Trials results. We pushed NEMA to carry out the environmental social impact assessment, and a certificate or a license was issued on 1st February 2021. We also had non-BT hybrids in the package, and the principal investigator was Calro. The seed rate at that time was prescribed as 1.5 kgs per acre. So, as I mentioned, we have not been, the resources have not allowed us to cover well the demand for BT cotton. So there are times we bring in mixes, but between 2021 and 2023, we have been in BT space until we got a little confused, and the farmers will give their experiences as we go on how it became very difficult to just stick on the road of BT. This is because, as I mentioned, very expensive. It comes late because of the procurement procedures, and for coordination of the stakeholders, it takes time. It will arrive late, it will be planted late, so the farmer starts losing right from the day of planting. So the highest support was in 2023, 2024 of 41.8 metric tons. And this was a contribution by so many stakeholders, including the public and private sector. I've tried to analyze the situation before we introduced BT cotton and the situation after we brought in BT cotton, and what was expected. We'll see that the potential is not achieved, perhaps at 10%. The yield of 1250, we are doing around 150 kgs per acre, and this is where our problem begins. So this presentation comes to the right people, and I believe that you will ventilate in it and see what is it that we can do better to ensure that these yields are achieved as per the promise of the national performance trials. So when you look at 2016, 2017, up to 2020, 2021, you'll see that that is the time we did not have BT cotton seeds. And on average, you will see that annual production, if you do an average, it's about 10,890 bales of lint. But after we introduced, again, an analysis of another 4 years gives us 6,828 bales. And this is it shows that these other seeds that we were used to have a good performance compared to BT. So BT appears to have dismal performance. We want to attribute it to very many factors, but let me just mention a few on the onset. The stewardship is not done very well, that farmers are left on their own. Of course, institutions like ours, we may not reach to the farming community because of the mandates that we have been given. So at that level, the farmer starts failing by doing the right plant population. That this BT requires, we are supposed to have 28,000 plants in an acre. Then you will find farmers with very scattered plant within their farms. There is no gapping, there is no thinning. Generally, the support in terms of skills misses, and it brings us to where we are today. If we are getting 28,000 plants and each ball is 80 grams, then we will be assured of a production beyond NPTs of over 2 tons. Unfortunately, this is not happening. So the highest yield we have registered in BT is 175 kgs per acre, and for conventional is 230. So again, conventional seeds are ahead of the BT. And comparisons, doing an average for 4 years, you find that BT gives 126 kgs per acre and conventional 150. So there's a significant difference, and you can see the promise was very high. So that is where we are. And now this brings us to an average. I'm not saying that this is what farmers get, but if you were to do a national average, then a farmer is likely to make a loss of about 8,000 shillings per acre. And this has been done by other agencies, and references can be made. But if the promise was held well, then the farmer would get 57,000 shillings, 968 per acre. So, and this analysis takes into account 100% subsidy on cotton seed, meaning that we need to do something around the BT space. So main challenge here is that the BT cotton seeds are special type of seeds. They require good nutrition, they require moisture. In some of the areas where we plant cotton are arid and semi-arid areas. I've mentioned the cost of seed, $26 per kg, which is sometimes unaffordable to smallholder farmers. And then inadequate extension service. So we recommend, and this is my personal recommendation, I've not consulted anybody, that I wish we could get to segregate cotton to just a few places, BT cotton to just a few places like Lamu, like Homa Bay, where we have adequate moisture, and even purposefully select farmers who can afford to buy farm inputs. Perhaps that would bring us to the level that we desire today. We are also hoping that we can bring down the cost of this seed by CADRO negotiating a franchise for BT gene to allow multiplication in this country. It is a story that had begun. It can be pursued. And then to enhance extension service and promote contract farming so that farmers access seeds on time. Many times we are getting these seeds, or farmers are getting these seeds when the season has already taken off. And with that, I want to thank you. Sorry, today I'm so brief and not as charismatic as I've been in the previous years. I seek for your indulgence. I've had a personal social issue, and I'm smarting out from it. Thank you. Thank you, the moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lubanga, for that presentation. I know we are slightly past our time. Should have finished around 4:30. But I'd like to request for your indulgence for another 15, 20 minutes so that we can be able to have a panel session with the experts who've made their presentations this afternoon. And I trust they'll be able to answer the questions from the plenary. I'm informed there's a gentleman called Chege who can sit in on behalf of Dr. Komen to answer the questions on the international laws and regulations. So karibu sana, Chege. I think I'll first open to the plenary before I ask my set of questions so that I give you priority considering the timelines are quite short. So we can have maybe the first round of 3 questions to the panelists. Then we'll have another round after that. So karibuni. Any questions for our panelists? I want to believe you are still very energized. Yes, and let's have the microphones. Yes, this right at the back. Maybe you can also say your name and agency, then you can ask your question.
Thank you very much. I'm George Obiero from the University of Nairobi. I've got 2 questions. The first one is to Kefis. You are doing quite well and you have got lots of tests you carry, aflatoxins and all the other tests. Is your lab accredited? Because accreditation will also help in the image of the labs. And the second one, very brief, to comment. He mentioned about barriers of trade, and he said that where there's a ban for more than 10 years, then you have to, without giving any scientific explanation, then this is not allowed. So how do you balance this with the precautionary principle? Thank you.
Maybe you can bring the, okay, then the microphone can come to the front.
Thank you. My name is Caroline Kasiwai from Kenya Bureau of Standards. And thank you for the presentation that you've made. And I can confirm that indeed we've been working very closely with NBA on development of the standards based on best practices, being the contact point for Codex and also the focal point for WTO and the national standards body. So I want to ask about the approvals because you've just told us that only BT cotton has been approved in the country. So it's the only GMO in the country. What about the other GMOs from other regions? How do we go about the approvals? And do we have partners or protocols which we allow, which we can be able to audit if other countries are doing the approvals? How are we going about that? Are we auditing them or we have to do the assessments for ourselves in country for us to approve them? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Florence Kigunzo, Deputy Director from Busia County. I have one question to pose. Talking to Michael is not complicated. And some of this data Mr. Lubanga has been presenting, importation protocols, arriving, distribution, it leads to the late arrival of the seeds. And most of our cotton in Busia, we rely on rain-fed. So if seed was produced in this country, it would reach farmers on time. It would also be revenue for the farmers in this country. And the truth is, BT is better than conventional cotton if you plant the right agronomic process. So kindly work on that.
Okay, we can take one last one. Then we are still going to do a second round. Eh? Yes. Then we can allow the panelists to answer.
Okay, I'm Florence from Busia. I have a question. How Biosafety Authority, how do you do your diligence? Sometimes because you have talked about the BT cotton is already approved in Kenya. But how do you do your follow-up with the farmers? Because sometimes you keep the seeds without planting. So how do you know that we are progressing or you are just there?
All right, panelists, maybe we can start. Where do we start? We start with Mushiri, moving that way. I think yours was the second question, isn't it?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I said in the presentation, so far Kenya has approved BT cotton. It is only a crop that is already with the farmers. The other crops, the BT base, is also approved by NPA. The virus-resistant cassava also approved by NPA, but they have not finished the other stages. The KFIS, which does the NPTs. There are few other stages that are remaining. But BT cotton is already with the farmers. I think you will have a session where farmers will be able to share their experience in the cultivation of BT cotton. I think it's on Thursday. We have a panel discussion with the farmers. The role of NPA, basically, NPA does not provide seeds. The mandate given by government is to ensure that this BT or any other GM technology that is coming to the farmers is safe. So when NPA approved BT cotton in 2020, it was not now the role of NBA to avail the seeds to the farmers, because this technology belongs to an owner, and it is the role of that owner to make sure that this technology is now available to the farmers who desire it. At our level as a regulatory role, once we approve a crop, our role is basically to ensure that we also monitor that crop that is now being cultivated by the farmers to ensure that if there is any unanticipated effect. For example, we are saying this cotton should be able to resist cotton bollworm. If you come to the farmers at that, if we see this pest is still with the farmers, we have to go back and check why this should be happening. But in terms of the seed system, that would be a very complex issue. I've had AFA saying they have been able to supply seeds from 2023, 2024. They have found challenges. But I like your suggestion that there should be a system of local seed production, because this reliance of importing seeds, first of all, does not guarantee the seeds are available when the farmers want it. You find by the time you finish the importation process, the rains are already maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks past the season. So by the time the farmers are planting, the rains are already almost midway. So there should be a system, and maybe Kefis and Afa will be able to talk about this, how we can have a system that ensures there is local seed production. How do we access a database? As I said, Kenya is a party to the Cartagena Protocol, and so is 170 countries. One of the obligations of that protocol is basically to ensure that any approvals of GM in any country, if a country makes an approval, that decision ought to be posted in a platform called the Biosafety Clearing House that is operated by the Cartagena Protocol Secretariat. So all decisions, including the ones that Kenya has made, those decisions are posted in that platform. Other countries that have also made approvals on BT cotton and other GM crops have also posted in that platform. So that is a central platform that countries that have already ratified the protocol share information on GM approvals and other biosafety information. Answers what my sister from KEBS asked. Additionally, at the website, at the national level, any decisions that we have made as NBA over the the international platform, we also post decisions on GMO approvals, our laws in our website. So all this information of what we presented, if someone would be interested to see the actual details, that information is publicly available in the website. Thank you very much.
I don't know whether whoever is controlling sound can help us to reduce the echo before I make my response. Caroline has asked what strategy Kenya has to produce its own BT cotton seed. Let me start by saying that we have two seed merchants whose materials have been approved. One is called Meiko, Kenya, and another one is called Seedworks. Because Meiko was a guinea pig, they was compelled to give a strategy. And in the strategy, they were supposed to train women farmers on how to multiply seed in this country. Unfortunately, this has not been done. But I know there are efforts from certain quarters, especially to have Carro take lead in this to ensure that we have our own BT cotton seed in the country. Maybe let me not speak for policy, but it is important for us. And just to finish with the importance of BT, yes, in isolated farms like in Lamu, farmers are getting about 700 to 800 kgs per acre, meaning that it is a good seed, except that it has to be done well. Perhaps if we do better stewardship, we will realize the promise. And if we restrict it to places where we have good nutrition, good moisture, then we are going to realize the promise. Thank you.
I think there's also the issue of auditing the farmers, where sometimes you may provide seed and then it's not used. I think that's what I understood from our representative from Busia.
Of course, that's very unfortunate if seed is provided and it is not used. It means that that one is not a farmer. The most unfortunate thing is that we may not have enough resources to come and pick those seeds and take them. But wherever we have identified, yes, we've picked and sent them to where they can be used.
There was that question that was asked on KEFIS labs being accredited. Yes, KEFIS labs are accredited with the accreditation of ISO 17025. That is on the competence on testing. And our analytical chemistry lab is accredited by KENAS, similarly to our quarantine station where we undertake detection of plant pests is accredited. And this accreditation comes with a specific test and a specific method. And also our other labs are also in the process of getting accreditation. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Prof. I respond on behalf of John. Um, when he was presenting, he highlighted the basis on which Kenya trades, and he presented two aspects. I think one of them is the World Trade Organization, which Kenya is party to, and he said that while we are party to these conventions and agreements, then the situation such as the ban that we were in should not last for 10 years. We all know maybe the reasons why the ban may have taken that long. Some of us suspect it could have been maybe the priorities, of the previous government, which actually may have changed towards the end, and that's why we probably saw the kind of shifting towards commercialization of BT cotton, and we are grateful that we under this bottom-up economic transformation agenda, we are now moving towards approval of more products. So in a situation where Kenya is party to all these international agreements and having domesticated some of these and having our own law, there is no reason why we should remain in a situation of a ban. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I think we can do a second round. Maybe before I come to you, we'll start with the lady in pink. Then we'll come to you, madam.
Hello, my name is Irene. From Science for Nature and Community. My question goes to National Biosafety Authority in regards to accreditation. KEFIS has said that it is ISO 170-025 accredited. Concerns about NBA being ISO 170-025 accredited, especially when it comes to the testing of the GM products, whether they are or not. I would like clarity on that. And secondly, Tanzania and Uganda are doing research on gene-edited mosquitoes. I would like a comment on Kenya on are we doing the same on gene editing mosquitoes and how far is it? Because most of the time there is a transmission from Uganda or Tanzania when it comes to mosquitoes. Thank you.
On our side, this is the left side. Any questions from this side of the room? I'll allow at least one question from this side, then at the center. All right, let's go to the center, then we can answer those questions. Okay. Maybe kindly start by introducing yourself, please.
To do the breeding, so that the breeding of cotton seed, the BT, which has already been adopted, and the farmer, without just a matter of meandering zigzag like this. If at all the Kenyan government put an effort to do the breeding to empower the cattle, we won't have the problem of beating cotton not in place. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll answer those ones first. We can start with the Dr. Mshiri, who's the microphone is with you.
Okay, thank you very much. The accreditation of the lab. So I want to start. NBA is first of all ISO certified to what we call the quality management system. That standard is called ISO 901-2015. So you are certified by KEBS. All our processes have been certified, starting from the laboratory to all the departments. In fact, last 2 weeks we had a very thorough audit from the Kenya Bureau of Standards. They had come to audit our processes for the purpose of recertification. And we have already been assured that our systems are still working and will be recertified for the next 3 years. Now, concerning the lab, our lab is a relatively young lab. It was established in 2020. We tested GMOs. We have already started the process of having the tests accredited by KENAS. We have applied to KENAS, the Kenya National Accreditation Service, basically to come and have our testing method accredited. We are already in the middle of that process. In the next few months, we should be able to have that lab accredited to the ISO 11725, 1702025, specifically for the PCR. It's called the PCR testing method. The mosquitoes.
The mosquito.
Okay, the mosquitoes. We have genetically modified mosquitoes. A number of countries are doing research on genetically modified mosquitoes. Their target is they are targeting to control or to reduce specific diseases. In Africa, the target is to manage and control malaria. So these mosquitoes, once they are released to the environment, will be able to do what we call the anopheles, family mosquitoes that cause malaria. In terms of commercialization, I said Brazil. Brazil have already commercialized. Those mosquitoes are out in the field, and they have been able to control, to a great extent, a certain disease called dengue fever in Brazil. But in Africa, the main focus is the mosquito, the malaria. Now, in our neighboring countries, in terms of kind of research that is going on, I said 3 countries are already in the research of genetically modified mosquitoes. We have Burkina Faso. Those mosquitoes are at very advanced, not advanced, but very early stages. They are still at the lab level. They haven't moved. If you recall the graph of releasing a GMO, you have a laboratory, greenhouse, field trials, then environmental release. For mosquitoes, it is the same process. You start with the laboratory, then you go to what we call a caged experiment. After that, you go to a field trial. After field trial, you go to environmental release. Where this research is for mosquitoes in Africa, they are still at the stage of laboratory level. I've said 3 countries are participating in that study. We have Burkina Faso, we have Uganda, and we have Tanzania. Some institutions here in Kenya have also shown interest that they would like to participate in that project. They have started preparing the containment facilities, but they are yet to launch an application to NPA for consideration. So the project will become here in some years to come, but currently, as a country, we have not approved or we have not received as NPA an application to approve that research of GM mosquitoes.
Yes, I've been asked to explain what happened in 2024. In 2024, we had a one government approach where PSS came together, those who are involved in the value chains, and coordinated stakeholders to make commitments for seed support. That's why we got our highest contribution of seed, 41.8 metric tons. So it was a coordination that brought that difference. The PS industry, Dr. Mwana, was taking lead in this. A question on whether BT is being affected by climate change. Yes, it is. Like I've mentioned, it is a special type of seed, hybrid. Unlike our conventional seed that is hardy, this one requires good moisture, adequate moisture. It requires nutrition. Unfortunately, the hybrids will require something extra, and the farmers should be ready for this, and it is not happening. So that contributes to our dismal performance, including the stewardship, the skills that are required to take care of the crop. A question about the seed types of BT that were approved. The national performance trial results did not show very significant differences in each of the seed type, meaning that there was no specific seed type for an area. But I also want to be open that if through farmers' practice you find that there's one that appears to be adaptive, more adaptive in a particular area and can produce more, then you let us know, and we can always bring in the agencies that are concerned to help in that initiative of promotion. Yes, Calro is doing something on certification of cotton seeds, especially those that they own, HAT 89M and KSA 81M. And because they were the principal investigators in the matter of BT cotton, then I want to believe they have the capacity to help bring BT cotton seed commercialization to a level where farmers can access at an affordable cost.
Thank you. There was a question about this and also the phytosanitary requirements. Second, when the material gets to the country, there are those we ensure the phytosanitary certificate is there, it is meeting our requirement, and after that, samples are taken for germination and purity. Other samples are taken to test the event to make sure that this GM has got the event that if it's BT, the gene is there, and if it is meeting all those requirements, the seed is packaged and labeled, and a sticker is embedded on it. Also, during at the point of entry, also other samples are taken for post-control, just to ensure that the requirements of the seed are met. What the farmer will be able to see at his field level is what KEFIS will also have an opportunity to have a look at to ensure that the seed met the requirements. So yes, indeed, KEFIS has got a system in place to ensure that these seed are meeting requirements and are labeled clearly.
No question was raised to me in this round. However, I want to maybe, address the question of hybrids and and the fact that probably the data showed, uh, you know, a, a little less performance of the aggregated BT cotton yield than conventional. Uh, First of all, I believe, and I would probably want to see more data from AFA on the choice or the methodology followed to arrive at this conclusion, because if it was done on ordinary farmers' fields and I think farmers are here, and I'm saying so because in the stewardship work that sometimes we carry out with together with NBA, I'm not so sure farmers will plant conventional BT cotton seeds, out of choice. I'm not sure, but probably I would want to understand the methodology followed. Probably the study, they were planted side by side or something, but if it was out of farmers' fields, then it's possible that farmers planted only what they had, and probably that's conventional seed, and probably that's why the yield was high, because farmers will plant what they have. If they had the seeds, the BT cotton seeds, then they would have planted those. Otherwise, they plant the conventional that is available. I would not so much blame the hybrids, because before the release, and Kefis is here, the approval decision is based on national performance trials and the recommendation of the varieties to various regions. And I'm sure that was considered, and they were given because they are high performing in those regions. So maybe, Fanuel, just for clarity, probably, maybe, I don't know whether I'm the only scientist in the room who wants to understand some of these things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that input. Now, we've had demonstration plots in which BT cotton and conventional seeds are planted side by side. And at opportune moment, I wish I knew, I would have supplied the data. But the data that I've given today, it is on farmers' fields and with a few assumptions. One of the assumptions was that we reduced a lot on conventional seed, and major part of our seed after we went into the BT space was BT cotton seeds. So we could comfortably conclude the results of the national results we get, that it reflects on the production or the output of BT cotton, because that forms a major, nearly 70% or 80% of the seed that is planted, that has been planted since we went to the BT space. But also, being scientists, why not? We can always collaborate and validate some of this data and bring out the true picture of what is happening. I'm sure if we collaborated and brought our resources, our minds together, and the methodologies are totally agreed upon, we can have a position, a national position that everyone will be agreeable to.
Thank you very much. I would request if for the remaining questions, if you can just interact directly with the panelists, because we are way past our time. It's 5:15. Okay, I can hear the burning questions. So do you allow for one more round? All right, then we can do one final round. Let's start with the gentleman at the back. This is the gentleman. Let him have at least a chance to speak.
Thank you so much for allowing. My name is Samuel Gudu. I'm a professor of genetics and plant breeding, and I've worked quite a bit on biotechnology. I just want to comment on the fact that BT maize is found now to perform lower than the conventional seed. And based on scientific principles, the BT maize was bred for specific goal. And if you give even hybrid 613 or 632 and plant it anywhere, it will definitely perform poorer than the local varieties in those areas. And therefore, I'm not worried so much that BT maize given to farmers and they're planting even in areas where the variety was not recommended, that it performed poorly. That is a common knowledge. And therefore, I would just suggest, one, that if it is true, BT maize was given the national yield performance to be grown on specific areas, then the data which we are receiving and comparing it with the local varieties should be specific to those areas where the BT cotton was actually released. Two, should we find that BT cotton hybrid is not doing very well compared to the rest of the other cotton, the traditional one, then as a breeder, I ask so many questions. And it therefore means we would fall back to the breeding and incorporate characters which in this particular region could have contributed to low yield of BT maize because the BT maize was not released for those parameters which it is confronting in the farmer's field. And therefore, as a breeder, I would ask other questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your comments and insights. So we can have Madam, and I think there's one person at the front, or yes. Go ahead, yes.
Okay, thank you once again. I have a question to KFIS. How will you come with a mechanism to sensitize our community? Because you have talked about uh, inspection about the plants and seeds which are entering in our country. So how will you manage the porous borders? Because we are importing those seedless and seeds every day. That is one. Number two, the first presenter talked about how we can penetrate international trade and meet the international standards. How can you these things to be organized, because we have not harmonized even our trade policy and standard. We are talking every day as African country to harmonize trade policy and standard because it's a non-tariff barrier in this African country. So, do you know how to bring it out? And last, how you people, the government officials from KFIS and AFA to work together, because every day and time we are putting in place those things or regulations who are making traders to smuggle even those things we are not supposed to smuggle. Because you want to tell me if I want to import sugar, I'm supposed to get import duty, but I'm a small trader. And yet import duty, I'm supposed to log into Ken Trade Portal. But this woman is not an educated woman. How will you assist those traders? Thank you.
Okay, the last two questions, then we'll close this session. We'll start here.
Thank you very much. I don't know which my question I will direct to, maybe Lubanga or Kefes. I'm Michael Onyuro from Kisumu. I'm a cotton farmer. A long time ago, we were growing KSA 81M and other label crops of cotton. Up to 2018, 2019, where the BT cotton were launched. After that, farmers seems to love BT cotton so much because the BT cotton produced a lot of yield. But recently, I, as a coordinator of Kisumu County, I received some seeds which are not labelized at all. But those seeds are being written, Government of Kenya, cotton seeds packed in 10 kg and not for sale. There is no label at all, and I don't know whether they are certified seeds or not. Lastly, they said that the BT cotton is a bit costly. After producing this, I don't know whether it is certified or not, I cannot say. But after bringing to us these cotton seeds, 10 kg packed, not for sale, do the government of Kenya mean to say that the BT cotton will be abandoned again? Because we thought that the BT cotton is the variety which they are supposed to bring to us to plant in this duration. But they brought to us another variety which is unknown. Kindly help in that situation, please.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Peter, a member of Scientists of Kenya Association. But I have some few questions directed to KEFIS and NBA directly. First of all, my first question will go to KEFIS, whereby during the importation process, we normally get to see that importers rely on the PIPs mostly on getting the phytosanitary certificate, which most of them are done outside the country. Like, for instance, if somebody is importing from maybe Egypt, they will have to provide a PIP from Kenya, whereby it will be used to apply for the phytosanitary in the other country. My question is, how do you guys validate or validate the phytosanitary which comes from other countries? Another thing, it is like a backup to the question that I've been asked. Most of the time, when importing, we get to see that importers declare commodities as non-GMO. Knowing the culture we have, most of the people might mix the items, maybe say this is not a GMO commodity, and whereas from the country of origin, it's a GMO. No, most of the time, when you see doing the import documentation, most people do non-GMOs. How are you able to combat that, knowing the culture we have and the kind of trade that happens in Kenya? Thank you.
All right. Panelists, I think we start with Kefis, then we'll come this way.
Thank you for the questions. Let me start with the last question. We rely a lot on plant import permit. That is one that KEFIS issues. First, the plant import permit has got the requirements for Kenya. If you want to bring a material from a certain country, the requirements are in that plant import permit. So when we issue you with that planting pot permit, you will go to our equivalent, KEFIS equivalent of the other side. Okay? So the KEFIS equivalent will check the requirements versus your commodity. They will do the inspection. Okay? And then after the inspection certain requirements apart from inspection, they will require a laboratory test. Okay? For example, if you are bringing in maize seed, okay, the requirement is a sample should first come to the country, or first a sample should come to the country, and then we test for the viruses that are associated with the maize, and thereafter we allow you to bring in the whole consignment. In our other planting pot permit, we have requirement inspection. You have to provide a laboratory report that will accompany the phytosanitary certificate. Okay? So as KEFIS validating the phytosanitary at the point of entry, we shall first look at our planting pot permit. What were the requirements that we gave out in that planting pot permit? If none of the requirement has been observed and stated or get, it will be intercepted. At times, our importers forge those certificates. Okay? And with that, we are able to communicate with the NPPO of the other side and validate if that phytosanitary certificate is from that NPPO. That's why at times we hold your material. And if we hold your material, and if we find that whatever you are using, the documentation you are using were forged, we intercept and we destroy the material at your own cost. Okay? Those are some of the measures that are there in place. Currently, we have a system that we have that is known as the e-phyto. E-phyto is between countries, and this the phyto is processed by KEFIS. It reaches the other NPPO electronically before the consignment reaches. Okay? And the other NPPO start validating and verifying the documentation so that when the consignment comes, the visual inspection on the consignment, just after confirming that this e-phyto was correct and was from KEFIS. So those are some of the measures that have been put in place. The other question that you asked is about declaration of non-GMO. I know NBA also will have a say on that, but for us as KEFIS, let me use an example of pest. We profiled certain countries having certain pests or certain diseases. Okay, so commodities coming from that country. For example, one of our trading partner has reported presence of a disease in maize known as goswilt, and we import a lot of seed from that country. So as KEFIS, the measures that we have put in place, any seed that comes from that country, there will be mandatory testing. And I know maybe such will apply for GMO, but and the pests that they have. Okay? The other question was on, I hope I've answered. The other question was on the seed that was labeled Government of Kenya. And I know our team is here, we shall be able to follow that. Because Government of Kenya, without other details, I think that is not full information that was there. And we also have a regional office at Kisumu, which you can report such incidences so that they can be able to follow and verify what was this issued as Government of Kenya. Okay? So that we're able to truly verify the contents of that material. The other issue was on the porous borders. Porous borders is an issue because we have official exit and entry points. But we also have those porous borders, we call them panya routes. Okay? So we usually have a multi-stakeholder agency approach at our border points, whereby they normally do border surveillances. Okay? To just, from these surveillances, they can be able to profile those border points and be able to know at this border point, these are the material that comes in. What can we do? Should we do awareness to people of the area to be able to know the risks that are there by bringing in material? Okay? So with that, we are using that multi-agency approach, and it's working, because most of the time you find our people are not aware. And the other thing is about smuggling and our regulation. And I feel as Kenyans, at times we are not patriotic to our country, because most of these challenges that you see in terms of diseases, in terms of pests, in terms of weeds, we've brought them deliberately. You are a scientist, you've gone maybe to a certain country, you see good material that is there. You put a few grains in your pocket, okay? You come and plant those grains in your experimental plot. The environment is conducive, and maybe the pest and be able to spread. And that's how we are bringing these weeds, these diseases, these insects. For example, a weed like cascuta, how did it come into the country? Those are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves. A weed like this water hyacinth, which is invasive, okay? Diseases like maize lethal necrosis, how do they come to the country? That's why we are having our regulation in place to try and curb some of these challenges that we are having as a country, and to try and reduce, because with the time, we shall find pests which can eradicate our biodiversity. We shall not be having this conference, okay? Because we shall not be having anything to discuss. So we need to realize that these regulations that are put in place, they are not barriers, but they are supposed to enhance and make us to do safe importation of materials, and also taking out other materials. For example, we have countries like Australia. Their biosecurity systems are very enhanced. You getting in with any plant material to such countries, it's very, very difficult. And they have made their people aware that coming into a country and you have this material is like impossible. It's just that our country people, we are not patriotic enough to know that we have systems in place. These systems are for us. When you want to bring in material, this is a procedure. And most of this procedure nowadays, at the button of your computer, you can be able to access KEFI system and be able to be issued with the permits and the phytosanitary certificate, so that as you are doing business, as you are doing research, you are doing research which is safe to our country.
I think there was one last issue about how do you support the illiterate importer. Is KEFIS providing any technical support on the ground for the cross-border trade? Maybe the small traders who are practicing cross-border trade and have to go to the online portal, but do not have that capacity to do so.
Yes, we support in the border points. There are those market days that you have our counterpart in Uganda bringing material, okay? This usually they are supported, and the good thing is most of them, those communities that live at the border point, they are very much aware of the systems in place. Even they are the ones who will come and say, I have this material, it is a market day, I want to take them to the market. And there is a radius with which they can operate. So awareness, KEFIS is continuously doing awareness, and our offices that are manning those exit and entry points do awareness. How we are facilitating regional trade.
Yeah, because
For our regional blocks, we usually have harmonized regulation. Like if you come for variety release and we have harmonized, which Kenya has harmonized. If you want to bring material from COMESA country, there is the harmonized protocol. Bring a variety from it has been harmonized. And we may, okay,
Is
it's
it
there.
maybe it
Maybe
is
we
it
shall
like
have more discussions to show you how we facilitated such. Country is benefiting from materials from our regional blocks.
Yeah, thank you for that question. These are efforts that are ongoing. It's not an easy task, and we all admit that. If you look at the African Continental Free Trade Area, the rollout, how many countries are on board, it hasn't been as easy as it should be. That is one example of harmonization. Yet, there are some successful case studies on harmonization, especially for instance, seed, on conventional seed. There is mutual recognition where if one country, for instance, in East Africa, has given an approval, then you do not have to do the entire process of testing and trials before you get an approval. That is for conventional seeds. And that's why there are efforts, there are talks within the East African Legislative Assembly, there are efforts across COMESA, so that to try and where countries have common platforms, where there is an NBA in Kenya, there is another one, there is a similar organization in Rwanda, there is a similar organization in now currently in Ethiopia, for instance. Maybe there, and such organizations in Tanzania. What commodities can we recognize? What decisions, what approval decisions can we recognize from one country to the other? Those are the efforts. They are not easy, but I think diplomatically and with goodwill, we will get there. And that's why Common was talking about data transportability. It falls in the same thinking that we do not have to repeat trials when our friends from Uganda have done the trials. When our friends, if we have done the trials, do they have to be repeated in Rwanda, for instance? Those are the kind of questions. There are efforts, baby steps, but we will get there.
All right, thank you very much. I think we'll end there and maybe continue the discussions during tea break. We've extended this session by an hour. Yeah, but I am very grateful. We had a very vibrant panelists. Maybe let's give them a clap. Yeah. You've done very well, thank you. I would also like to recognize our sign language translator. I think they've done very well today. Let's also give her a clap. Team. Honestly, people have been alert the whole afternoon, and it's been quite, the discussions and questions have been very vibrant. So we also deserve our clap ourselves. Yes, so I will call this session closed for now, but I'll encourage that we continue with the discussions. I know there's like 2 questions that haven't been answered, but let's feel free to interact with our panelists after this, and you can have more discussions with them. I don't know whether we have any administrative announcements. Maybe we can have them now. Asanteni.
We can appreciate the chair Director, Dr. Yaga, for taking us through that session. And yeah, you can have your seats now. Just a logistical announcement is tomorrow we'll be starting. Okay, They were requesting a group photo here for the panelists and the session chair. The group photo here, session chair and the team, the panelists. You can have a group photo here, please, just here. So as they come, taking their group photo, is that I want to acknowledge the presence of the CEC Agriculture Nakuru County. Are you there? I'm told is part of us, and also the CEC Agriculture Trans Nzoia County, and yeah, you are there, and also the CEO Biosafety Appeals Board, Judy Wamai, you are there, and also the ISA team being led by Dr. Margaret Karembu, Director ISA. Okay. So you have a gift for the panelists, please. You've done us a very good job. So Esther, please, you can give them the gift. Okay, I'll allow you give them one by one, the way they are. Okay, starting with our. Okay. Yes, it's the panelist. So I will allow. Okay, so we can also give our director a chance to appreciate the panelists. Please, yeah, do that. Sorry. Okay, so starting with Mr. Mushiri from National Biosafety Authority, we can appreciate Mr. Mushiri. Thank you. Then, followed by our panelist from AFA. Thank you. We can appreciate. Followed by our panelist from KEFIS, Ivan. Thank you. And lastly, on behalf of John Comel, Dr. Paul, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And our chair of the session, you already have a gift, so you'll get another one. Thank you. So final announcements is that those financial facilitation for our participants, if you have not been facilitated, ensure you see, I think Esther and the team, you will be sitting somewhere there. We have people who have not been facilitated. So you'll be getting the facilitation for your stay in Naivasha. So tomorrow we'll be starting at 8:30. Tomorrow we'll be starting at 8:30, and that marks the end of our today's presentation. And we can all stand so that we finalize. You can all stand, and we finalize by all of us saying the grace, and may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us now and forevermore. Amen. See you tomorrow at 8:30, same place.